All right. So thank you again for joining me today. We've also got some other food bank um, partners on the call. So it's great to finally meet a lot of you. I haven't met you. I've just started about 3 months ago. I'm Eric Powers. I am the new Health Nutrition Programs Manager. I'm also the Nutrition Resource Manager. So I do all the HPNAP guidance and guidelines. You might hear from me about food safety. So I'm going to be doing food safety training and things like that. So it is great to be able to speak with you today. The first thing I'm going to do is share my contact information in the chat. Let me just get over to that here. Oops. So if you have any questions, you're feel free to reach out to me by phone or email, whatever you're comfortable with. So that's in the chat for you. Let's see here. All right, so what we're going to do, the beginning of this, the content that I'm going to be providing should only take about 15 minutes to cover. I really wanted to provide a space for everyone that had questions, clarifications, and things like that. So the content of the material I'm going to be presenting should only take about 15 minutes. If you do have questions as I'm talking, you're free to enter them into the chat. We'll cover them all at the end to the best of my ability. And if I don't know the answer to something, I will find it for you for sure. So you can either type it into the chat or at the end, we can go around and you're welcome to come off mute and share. All right. So let me just get back onto my screen here. All right, so the 3-day package, as you're all aware, is the minimum number of choices in each category that should be offered to a household based on how many people live in that household to last them at least 3 days. So some new updates from the state have come through. This includes a new format, some additions to the addition of an optional dairy category, foods that are listed in their most common packaging size, and the addition of some common foods as some examples. So we are going to go deeper into depth on all of these. So for the new format, the guideline tells you how many choices per category by household size. The number of choices have not changed. So that's the biggest takeaway. I want to make sure that the number of choices per category has not changed. It's just the layout has changed, the way it's displayed. So the numbers are the same. They're just laid out differently. Honestly, I think it's a little easier to see because you can kind of tell by the steps of how many choices go to how many people. And I like having those next to each other because you can really tell the difference between, how many people and how many choices. I think it's easier to look at quickly. So this is the old version. The layout, again, it's more of a grid. It's not as many examples on these. They had limited examples, and they also didn't have a lot of commonly sized items. As you can see on the old guidance, they had 6 eggs instead of a dozen, or peanut butter in an 18-ounce container, which I don't know if that exists anywhere. So those are the sorts of things that are changed on the new guidance. So this is going to be the new guidance. It is going to be 2 pages. So it's going to be 2 pieces of paper, 2 paper. When you do when you do post this, it'll be 2 pages. It's set out as steps of how many choices for each household size. And I think looking at them back to back makes it a lot easier to see the differences. And it should be a lot easier to interpret, I think. So the biggest change besides the layout is going to be in the guideline is separating the dairy and the protein groups. So in the old version, they are combined, which is on the left. And then in the new guidance, they're separated. So as you can see. So the biggest thing about this is going to be you'll notice in the dairy group, the green arrow notes that this is offered based on product availability. So that means that dairy is optional, but it's highly encouraged. So the state knows that dairy is highly perishable and expensive, so it's not always available at the pantry, and that's okay. It's something, if you have the ability to offer dairy, we highly encourage it, but we understand that not everybody has the capacity to do so. You can absolutely always check in with the food bank if we can help you to provide dairy, whether that might be in helping you get more refrigeration or any other options that we can help you with, dry dairy, dry milk options. We would be happy to support you in that. So that means that dairy can no longer be counted as a protein choice. So all of the protein choices need to come from the protein category. So we can no longer, if you had a gallon of milk, you can no longer count that as a protein option. All right. Another change that was made was including common package sizes for corresponding choices to make things less confusing. For example, on the last guide, peanut butter, as I mentioned, was 18 ounces for 3 choices, but that's not a very common size. So on the new guidance, it'll show 16 ounces for 2 choices because that's the most common size that's provided. Another example is the eggs on the last guide was 6, counted as 1 choice. Now it's listed as 12 for 2 choices to accommodate the fact that most eggs come in a dozen. So the guidance doesn't change. It's just trying to make it easier to follow with the more common sizes. The same thing for meat. It should be easier for you to calculate. Previously, it was listed as 2 choices for a half a pound. Now it's 4 choices for 1 pound, and 1 pound is the more common package size, so that should a lot less math that you have to do, which is always a good thing. And then lastly, they added some other foods that are commonly offered as suggested by pantries. So canned meals, actually, so a lot of the pantries throughout New York State offered, they wanted to make some changes. And one of the ones that actually came out of our region was included canned meals. So that could include like canned stews, mac and beef. Those things can be counted as a protein as long as they contain 7 grams of protein per serving. And then choice guidance as well for veggie burgers, canned beef, and pork, which we also offer. And then they listed out as grain examples for tortillas, stuffing, cornmeal, box mixes, and oatmeal packets, which are regularly offered. So we wanted to make sure that those were easy to count. So now that you've seen the guidance, we're going to provide you with we want you to review it, look it over, figure out if you have any questions. Once you're ready, you're free to post the guidance and start working off this guidance. We are going to be working on sending out laminated copies of the guidance so that it'll be easier for you to post in your pantries and your sites. So again, the choices are, they're minimum. So that's, the 3-day package is for 3 days. If your site wants to offer more than 3 days, you're more than welcome to. It's just kind of a guideline to make things easier on you, so you're not needing to create resources on your own. It's something for you to be able to use as a resource. And then the examples aren't an exhaustive list. So if something's not on the guidance, that doesn't mean that it doesn't fit into a category. If you ever have those sorts of questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me or your PPCs and to ask those types of questions of where something might go. And then, so again, I just want to do a quick summary of the changes. So again, the format is going to change. The new guidance is 2 pages, and the way the choices are displayed is different. The number of choices is going to be based on household sizes. That has not changed. The dairy category, dairy and protein used to be a combined category. Now they are separate. So dairy products no longer count as proteins. The dairy category is encouraged but optional, meaning that you are not required to distribute dairy to meet the minimum package if you don't have it in stock. There's also the changes to the package sizes. So the examples in the old versions of what counts as a choice were sometimes very different than how some things are packaged in real life. So for example, again, with the peanut butter, the frozen meats and eggs, and some other things that were updated to reflect the more accurate package sizes. In addition to this is of commonly offered food. So HPNAP took your suggestions and added more examples of common pantry staples to a list of examples such as pancake mix, oatmeal packets, and more. Including the biggest addition is the addition of canned meals that can be counted as proteins as long as they contain at least 7 grams of protein per serving. So I'm also going to include in the chat a couple of resources, and we'll be sending out a follow-up email with the video guidance. There is another video on YouTube already that has, it's another short video that has this information that you can always refer back to. Let me just get back to your page here. So these 3 links, one of them is the HPNAP website that has this information, but in more detail. So if you wanted to really get in the weeds and do some more digging, you're more than welcome to. Another one is the video that I mentioned, the YouTube video. And then the third is the packing guide the link is to our partner portal. It's located on our partner portal. If you ever needed to go back and look at it, you're free to print it out and start using it if you'd like to. We are planning on sending out, we're working on sending out laminated copies for each pantry to have on hand so that we can share that with you easier. Okay, and so I think maybe when we go to questions, maybe it might be easier if we have this up so you can kind of see that as we talk. If we have any questions, let's see. All right, so Janet says our pantry has a surprising number of families with more than 6 members. Do we cap them out at the 6 people quantity? Would we give a household of 8 twice the 4-person capacity? I think that's probably reasonable. We could certainly, if you wanted to, I could absolutely work with you on developing a resource that goes higher if you go up to 6 or 8. Janet, would that be helpful for you? Okay, so I will, and what site are you with, Janet?
Newfield.
Newfield, great.
Sorry, couldn't find
No,
my
you're
unmute
fine.
button.
And so 6 to 8 per household, that would be your kind of your.
Yeah, we have some that are like 9 and heading towards 10 also.
Sure, I'll develop something out towards 10 then.
That'd be great.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't, if somebody has more than 6 people, it doesn't mean you stop giving them, and if it's easier for you to double it up, do it for now, because I don't know what the actual answer to that is. So by all means, if it's 8 people, just double up 4. I think that's perfectly reasonable. But I will look into that and maybe develop something to share with everyone. All right, let's see. Lindsay says PPCs will love this in the middle of a site visit trying to do math. Absolutely. So Linda, we had a question about bagels. I believe I can't, so that's on the grain. So it says 6 rolls or bagels. You can see here, that's the second one listed. So bread, 1 loaf, 6 rolls or bagels. So that would count as your choices. So that would count. All right, so that's everything in the chat. Does anybody else have any questions, concerns? How do people feel about this? Are you feeling comfortable? Are you feeling like this is going to be easy to roll out? Is it something that you think will be useful?
So this is Janet from Newfield. I think I'd seen this a couple of months back when it started rolling out, and I thought it was like 1,000 times easier to interpret than the other one. Um, I'm generally new to the whole food pantry, food banking thing, relative to many, many, many other coordinators or even vo just plain old volunteers. And that old list made your head spin.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel it. Just the visual itself is it's a lot easier to follow.
Yeah.
It's not as dry of material. The other one was like reading a textbook. How was everybody else feeling? Anybody else think this is a good idea, bad idea, have concerns?
Yeah, I guess I have a quick question if I may.
Sure.
So since dairy is optional, let's say we don't have any dairy, would we then offer people more choices from the other groups, or do we just
No, it would just be, it's more of an optional thing. So it's not something you need to replace at all and worry about that. If you want, I mean, you're more than, if you want to give people more food, we're never going to tell you not to do that. But as far as the guidelines, it's not a, if I don't have this, I'm going to replace it with that type of thing. So if you want to give them, if you have the ability to, and they want more, by all means, you can, but it's not something that if I don't have, if, and there is the optional. So, but the same thing would be true of if I don't have any grains to give, it doesn't mean I can just give more protein and then it would balance out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So, I guess my follow-up question would be, we've been getting a lot of almond milk and coconut milk, non-dairy. Like, I mean, what group does that fall under?
Sure. So that's going to be, if you look at the dairy choice here, it says enriched milk substitutes. So that's what that
Okay.
means.
So I need to read. Got it.
No, you're fine. It's fine. Perfectly reasonable question. But again, say if if you have those, or if say you don't have refrigerator space and you're able to offer dry milk, that's great. That counts. Does that answer?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Any other questions, concerns? Is there any other resources anybody wants in regards to this? Is there anything that I could provide to you that would make your lives easier when it comes to this? We are going to share, I'll send out the video as well as all the resources that I've included here. By all means, if a question pops up in your head after we get off this call, feel free to reach out to me, call or email, reach out to your PPCs, and they can ask me however you feel comfortable getting that question to me. If you don't want to talk in groups, I understand that. I don't like that either. But um, feel free. So reach out. If you have an idea of something that might be helpful for your site, please let me know. Like Janet
Hey,
was asking for the multiple. Yeah, was somebody talking?
yeah, Eric, back on the dairy as an option.
Yeah,
Um, I like that that's an option, so they're not, because it's not often available. But what if it's the case that you are down in stock on so many other things, would you still have credit, added to your package because you do have dairy available, right? Like it's not necessarily that you
So,
need it in every package, but if it's there, but you don't have, say the beans, but you have the eggs, would that still count towards the protein?
yep. And so eggs are a protein. Eggs could
Okay.
be a protein no matter what.
Okay.
But if, as you know, it's funny because this is where I'm also a dietitian. And so this is where if somebody said they were having Greek yogurt as part of their meal, I would absolutely count that as a protein. Like that could be a protein when you're eating. But so it is a little frustrating in that regard, that certain things you can't substitute. I asked that yesterday because that's a question I would have. So thank you for asking that, Stefan. But I actually asked the HPNAP, our state team, that exact question. I said, if say you only had, if one person came in and you only had peanut butter, but you also gave them Greek yogurt, would that count as protein? Because in reality, that's going to be enough
Mhm.
protein. It does not count for that, but don't, I mean, don't, nobody's going to, there's no punitive actions for any of this. This is, think of this as a guideline. No, you're not going to get in trouble if you running low one day on protein and, you're not able to, give as much as you can, do the best that you can with what you have. Never think that this is ever going to be, we're going to trying to come after you or, we're going to get you because one day you are running low on beans. Like that's not what we're here to do. We're more, think of this more as a resource for you to make your life easier of how to feed people complete meals as opposed to a guideline that you have to follow no matter what, or you're going to get in trouble because it's not that. I promise you that. So does that make sense for everybody? And I want to make sure, if you have questions like that, don't be scared to ask those types of questions to me. You know, that we're all here just trying to make sure people get fed. That's the number one thing that we're doing. And that's all I care about. So there's never going to be a point that any of us are working with you that we can't work with you towards that end goal. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns, issues?
Eric, I had one in the proteins, meat and plant-based.
Yeah,
I'm a little confused by the line where it says four canned beef stew, comma, spaghetti and meatballs, comma, chili, comma, ravioli, comma, or lasagna 15 ounces, at least 7 grams protein per serving. Is that supposed to be another comma? 1 dozen eggs equals 2 choices?
I would say so. Those would probably be, I would say, yeah, that should be a
Okay.
comma after the
Okay.
7 grams per serving.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not quite sure what the
So,
4 is in there for, to be honest with
yeah,
you. 4 canned. I think that might honestly be
that,
a
I mean,
typo.
that's four
'Cause it
15-ounce cans.
No, I don't. 4 canned beef stew. I'll double check, but I can't imagine
Thanks.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, thanks.
714. Or however,
I think it's because the 4 times
4
7
times
grams
7 is 28
equals
grams of
28
protein. And you're
grams.
the serving and the choices are supposed to be 28 grams of serving. Absolutely, that's what it is. So yes, so it would have to be 4 cans to match that 28 grams, which goes back to my question about why the Greek yogurt wouldn't satisfy that, but that's another thing. I don't make this guidance. I'm just
Mhm. Mhm.
handing it out, but I will. So that does absolutely make sense. So 28 grams of protein is the guideline. Um, so it would be 4 cans. So it could be 1 can of each of those. So if you had a can of beef stew, spaghetti, meatballs, chili, and lasagna, as long as all four of those equaled 7 grams. And or something akin to that type of. It doesn't have to just be those four things. It can be another canned meal, basically. And then some of these, as I feel like I'm going to get clarity on that, because I feel like there might be some of these that would be 28 grams. So I'll double check on that and I'll get back to you, because that's a great question.
Thank you.
Anybody else that's looking at this and is finding questions like that? So one thing you'll notice over here, can you see my little mover? So over here it says juice limit to 1 container per household. This was another question that I had.
Oh.
There might be households that have, like Janet mentioned, 10 people. So, use that as, use your better senses with that. It's not, if you want to do, there's no real guidance on that. The question has been asked. If you want to come up with your own, what we don't want you to do is give out all juice as your fruit or vegetable option. That's what we don't want you to do. I think it's more of a limit, trying to prevent that from being the only thing that you give. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't want you to only give them juice. But if you start getting up to 6, 8 people in a household and you want to give them 2 things of juice, that's probably fine. But it's more of just do it within reason. So if it's a household of, if it's a 1-person household and you're supposed to give them 5 choices, don't give them 3 choices being juice. It's more that sort of guidance. Does that make sense for everybody? Things like cheese, not cheese food, which I always think is funny. And then when it has these broken up, so similar to the 4 canned beef, so like the Greek yogurts would be 2 6 ounces each, but sometimes you might get the bigger tubs. So then you might need to do a little bit of math, because if you're giving out a bigger tub, you don't need to give out 2 of those. So this would be more like the individual size.
28 grams. Another one of those size quirks is the
Sure.
salmon, because sometimes it comes in a small can and other times it's in a big can.
Absolutely. Yep. So that's, those are the sorts of things. I think they do a pretty good job on the most used items, like the peanut butter, canned beans, but definitely there are different size cans of any of those chicken, tuna, salmon that you can get. And they're, 5 ounces is probably the most regular, but there's definitely some variance in that.
Ouch.
I hope you're all right. Anything else popping out to anybody? Same thing for something like frozen vegetables. Sometimes they come in smaller packages, so maybe you need 2 of them to equal at least 16 ounces. If anybody does have, like I said, if anybody does have questions after this, after you look into this any further and something does pop up, or if something, if there is a resource that would make your life easier in regards to this, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk with you about it, and ask, I can pass along questions to the state level and figure out what needs to happen for everybody. And I'm always down to make extra resources for pantries. I know that, I know things can be hard to translate to our neighbors, so I want to make sure that we can make sure we serve the people that we need to serve. And again, I want to emphasize that this is guidance, guidelines. We also want to emphasize choice. That's something that we all are proud to make sure we're offering people choice. So if we have a person that doesn't want 3 days of food, if they, for whatever reason, maybe they don't have storage space, maybe they're about to get on the bus and they don't want to carry around that much, whatever it might be, that's fine. Do what you need to do. But this is, use this as a tool and a resource, and not as don't think of it as kind of like a gotcha type of thing of we're going to come in, and if you're not 100% on every single thing, that you're going to be in any sort of trouble, because it's not that at all. We just want to make sure that we're getting as much food to people as we can, as easily as we can, without making it a undue hardship on you and the volunteers. With as little math as possible, which is always what I shoot for. Any other questions, concerns, issues? Oh, let's see. Oh, I think I answered that already. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you all coming on. If there's nothing else, I will let you get back to the rest of your day. I will absolutely be sending all of this out to you. Hopefully you got the links that I put in the chat and my email address and phone number. You're always welcome to reach out with any questions, or if you need any more guidance. But other than that, thank you so much.
Okay.
Hope you stay warm.
We call it invigorating.
Yeah, it is, definitely. Well, I hope this was helpful for everyone. Thank you so much, and I look forward to coming out and doing some site visits and meeting you in person.
Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your time.
you.
Thank you.